All right. Today I've got this relay that came from a car from somebody I work close to. He, he's somebody I respect, and he has a car that is not working. And he was told that, or at least he saw a video online that said that this relay has these solder joints that break apart because of heat, or over time they corrode, and need to be resoldered. I'm going to start with just some hot air, not too hot. I don't want it to melt any of the plastics. Just want to heat up the plane. There's a lot of copper on the bottom of this board, and heating everything up will make removing the solder a lot easier. I'm going to start by removing all the solder, looking at the components, and then adding this solder back in, and just making sure that everything has continuity and that everything works. And now that everything's warm, I'm just going to use a solder sucker along with my iron. This solder sucker is obviously part soldering iron as well. It works really well in combination. And I'm just going to clear out almost all the solder that I can. Then I'll go through with a wick, clean out as much of the solder, take a look at things, see what is damaged or what the board looks like, and then go from there. Once all the solder is off of the board, I'm going to use some braided copper wick. It's important to put enough flux on each of the places that you want to remove. It's really the flux plus the heat that draws the solder into the wick. So that being said, when I use my iron, I am not going to press down. It's not a sponge. I'm just going to let the heat from the iron warm up the wick, melt the solder, melt the flux and the solder, and let the solder then be drawn into the wick by the heat. I'm going to speed through these parts. I just wick away all the solder and then clean up the board and get ready to look at it for the first time underneath the microscope. All right. Looks like some of these pads are damaged. I'm going to try to just get the thing out of the cover and look at the board by itself, or at least without the large cover in the back. And the way I'm going to do that is just to maybe use the soldering iron and try to finagle the pins out of the cover a little bit. And the cover is off. All right, so it does look like these pads are a bit damaged. You see that some of the copper's been ripped off of each of these. This one looks like it's a little bit pulled off the board, but the good news is that none of these are without being able to be repaired. Just looking at some of the other components here, um, everything seems fairly clean on the inside. Concerned with some of the smaller little components that look like resistors. I'm not really certain what they are. Look like they were kind of falling out of the board, and I'm going to take at least one of those out and take a look at it. So I'm not certain what this is. It looks like a resistor, but it has a polarity to it, like a diode. But you can see the symbol on the board is square, like it would be some sort of alternate resistor. I'm not certain. Okay, I'm just going to clean everything up with some steel wool. The ends of this, I think it's maybe a diode of some sort, are a little corroded, and I'm going to maybe clean off the pins on this big case as well. Once I get as much corrosion off as possible, I'm just going to put these small, I don't know, diodes back on the board and solder them in place, and then I will put everything under the microscope and see what I can do about those pads. And they are soldered back on the board. Okay, these pads are a bit of a mess. So what I'm going to do is um, clean this one up. This is the one that's most concerning. I don't want that pad to rip off any further. And for that, I think I'm just going to use UV resin, which is a strong glue that is UV activated. That'll hold the pad to the board, and then I can use solder to make all the other connections and kind of hold everything in place. Doesn't take much glue. It's a very small amount. Just going to try to make sure that some of it is underneath this pad, and then I'll use the UV light. I'll cut out most of the time for it though. This cures quickly. Okay, and now it's cured, and we are ready to put everything back together. And as always, flux is your friend. It is what allows the solder to flow. It is what gives you a nice finish. If you are not using flux, I don't even know how you would do this well. All right. And now that everything has flux, I'm just going to start soldering all the components on, and then we can look underneath the microscope and see what they look like. When I get to the big pads, I think it's really important to put a lot of solder. I don't need to be stingy with it. Mostly for, just making certain those connections with the pads, also for a little bit of strength. Um, but I think in the end, they should be well connected. Something satisfying about doing this. I don't know. It's nice to watch the way the solder flows. I'm just gonna clean this up. This is isopropyl alcohol, 99.9%. And here we are under the microscope. And you can see the damage to the pads, but the solder is certainly making connection to the rest of it. These two right here, two little solder connections look like they might be a little close. I'm gonna have to check with the um, multimeter, make certain they're not bridged. But otherwise, everything else is looking really good. All right. When I test these two, they do not look like they're connected. 175 ohms. There's probably a component between them. I'm just going to go through, check a few of the other pieces, just make certain there's continuity between any of the big pins and the other pins to see that there's no disconnect on the board, and can speed this part up. After the quick clean, we'll put it all back together, and here it is. One relay for a Honda CRX, I think from the years 1988 to 1991. I'll return it to the owner, and hopefully I can hear if it works. It has now been resoldered and all the connections are clean. So thank you for watching.